I've talked about a lot of different cartoon TV channels in my videos, and most of them can usually be found by having cable. Even though cable TV itself isn't exactly alive anymore, streaming took care of that. Channels like Nickelodeon, Disney Channel, and Cartoon Network, it's kinda dead to be honest. These channels continue to be recognized despite the changes. However, what happens when you don't have cable TV? Well, obviously your options are very limited. There was of course PBS Kids, but that's not really the one that people watched in situations like this, at least not me. There was a channel that I believe was the king of satellite children's television, Qubo. I'm sure you've heard of this channel in some form, whether it was a retrospective video or clickbait titles. But it's time for me to give my input on the channel, as I experienced watching Qubo for a time growing up. So with all that out of the way, let's go back and see what Qubo was all about.
Jed, are you? Side.
And now for our feature presentation.
Qubo, also known as the Qubo Channel, was a 24-hour television network first created in 2006. It originally started when a few media companies, namely Ion Television, NBC Universal, Scholastic Corporation, Classic Media, and Chorus Entertainment, all agreed to create the brand together. This channel would be geared towards children and young teens, featuring a lengthy lineup of shows. These of course included some educational titles, as it was most likely required. Eventually, Qubo became its own channel, breaking away from NBC, where it would continue to air its programming for years. Most of the shows aired on Qubo were taken from the previously mentioned companies that helped start the channel. Qubo did continue to obtain licensing for other shows as time went on, however. They would eventually begin airing Filmation's cartoons as part of the Qubo Night Owl block, which I oddly remember seeing once. Things weren't always perfect for Qubo, mostly regarding acquisitions and scheduling issues, but the channel continued to survive despite these problems. Unfortunately, this wouldn't be the case come 2020. On September 24th of that year, Ion Media, the parent company of Qubo, was purchased by the EW Scripps Company for $2.65 billion. Following the acquisition, EW Scripps would ultimately pull the plug on Qubo altogether, and on February 28th of 2021, Qubo would have its final broadcast before it was shut down for good. And no, I'm not going to talk about that video. If you actually believe that was real, I'm genuinely concerned for you. Anyways, I think we've talked enough about the channel itself. But what kind of cartoons did they have? Well, that's what we're going to focus on. I'll mostly be going over the ones I've actually seen, but I'll try to mention some other ones as well. But let's continue. The main standout that got eyes on Qubo in the first place was of course VeggieTales. I was never really a fan of this franchise. I was pretty much forced to watch it as I was going to a Christian school for a few years. I just never saw the appeal of the show, but it's probably just me since I'm not religious. Don't think too hard about that. But the show does a good job at explaining biblical events through a rather kid-friendly, fun style. It was actually a bit of a challenge for VeggieTales to survive on Qubo. Due to restrictions on religious content set by NBC at the time, the show aired while omitting any references to God or any other religious figures. Essentially, NBC wanted to make VeggieTales a lot like what it would eventually become years later. VeggieTales continued to air on the channel until 2009 when it was pulled. There was also the spin-off to VeggieTales known as 321 Penguins, which just kinda existed. But anyways, let's keep going. So, brief story time here. When I was around 9 years old, my family lost cable TV for about a month or two, so I was left with both PBS Kids and Qubo as my only sources for cartoons. I didn't really like PBS Kids, so I stuck with Qubo to see if anything interested me. Then one day I heard that there was a cartoon on Qubo about a hedgehog. I was a Sonic fan at the time, so this intrigued me. I eventually caught the show when it came on, and it was not Sonic. But it was a show called The Mysteries of Alfred Hedgehog. I was slightly disappointed, but I was still intrigued, so I watched it anyways. The Mysteries of Alfred Hedgehog was a show from 2010, which focused on, well, Alfred Hedgehog, along with his friends. Their main goal is to solve mysteries surrounding Gnarly Woods, the land they live in. The show ran for one season with a total of 26 episodes, with each episode containing two 11-minute segments. Alongside Alfred, there's his friends, Camille, a wallaby, Milo, a skunk, and his little sister Lily. Together, they go on their adventures while also dealing with the main antagonist of the show, Cynthia. A bird, I think. There are a ton of interesting locations seen in the show too. The animation is decent enough, it being from France I expected that, and honestly the one thing I remember the most from this show was the banger intro.
Alfred Hedgehog finds the turns and twists. When it's serious, mysterious, you can't resist.
So overall, decent show. So what else do I remember from Qubo? This show, I guess. Jane and the Dragon was probably my least favorite show from this channel, and it's purely because of the animation. This is mostly just my bad opinion, but I am not a fan of motion capture CGI. It's just very uncanny to me. The only time I actually liked this was with Monster House, and this is not Monster House by any means. But it's still not that bad. I mean, we've seen mocap used in worse things. At least it looks like they tried with the show. Anyways, this show is actually based on a book of the same title. The main characters are of course Jane, a kid who wants to become a knight one day, and a dragon named Dragon. Had to cut corners somewhere. It's another show where the main characters go on wild adventures while learning important lessons along the way. From what I can tell, people seem to like the show, and I can kinda see why. The writing is actually pretty good. It manages to keep the viewer invested in what's happening. I'm sure I'm gonna get a lot of people in my comments claiming a different opinion than me, and that's fine. If you like the show, more power to you, I guess. But this one just isn't for me. Anyways, moving on. Now for Pecula, a show I remember well enough. This is another CGI animated show and it's rather blocky this time. Taking place in Cube Town, this is a show about a penguin named Pecula, and for the life of me I could not remember if this was a TV show or a video game. You'd think it was a video game from looking at it. The show originally ran from 2001 to 2002, with a total of 2 seasons consisting of 26 total episodes. Pecula actually aired on Cartoon Network at one point as well. Pecula, the character, is rather optimistic, but always wants to help out others. However, he doesn't exactly make situations better, mainly due to his clumsiness. There's a ton of diverse supporting characters consisting of different animals too. And funny enough, there actually was a video game based on Pecula. It was released for the Sega Pico. I think the animation makes it stand out from everything else on Qubo, not to mention how fitting it is that the show made of cubes is on a channel called Qubo. That didn't land as well as I wanted it to. But overall, this show was okay. Let's keep going. This was a show that I found rather odd. Being Ian originally aired in 2005 and 2008, however it was brought to Qubo in 2009 where it remained until 2021. The main character is named Ian James Kelly, a blatantly obvious reference to Ian James Corlett, the show's creator. Ian is a kid with a passion for the film industry. He always has his camcorder with him, ready to film something he finds interesting. There's also his family, which is the complete opposite of him. Actually, this family is completely dysfunctional. Yeah, we're dealing with one of these shows. If you've seen my Loud House video, you know I hate dynamics like this. Usually the dysfunctional family trope is just not funny. It just makes me hate the characters. This show is not the worst example of this, clearly, but it would have been better without this trope. It has your typical 2000s Canadian cartoon art style, which doesn't really make it stand out in my opinion. I will say the writing is at least passable. It's not poorly written and even has some clever dialogue in the episodes. Admittedly, I only watched a few episodes back then, but they weren't too bad. And once again, a banger intro. Overall, this is really middle of the road. It's not the worst, but it's not the best either. On to the last entry. Now for the final entry, mainly because this is the only other show I actually remember watching. Pearly was a cartoon that originally aired from 2009 to 2011. It's yet another Canadian cartoon and another cartoon based on a book series. This show is centered around fairies and magic as it takes place in a city. The main character is Pearly, a fairy who is appointed with the task of maintaining Jubilee Park, a staple location in the show. She loves to throw parties and host big events throughout the city. There's of course a large cast of other fairies with a ton of lore, which is usually not something I expect from lesser known shows like this. Pearly is usually dealing with the main antagonist, her own cousin, Sapphira. She never liked how popular Pearly was compared to her, and tries to boss people around. Other supporting characters include Opal, Jasper, Fern, and the Great Aunt Garnet. Honestly, this show isn't bad either. I saw it by accident one day and I actually thought it was interesting. Of course, I had to watch this in secret given what it was about. If you're into shows about fairies and fairy tale adjacent cartoons, you might like this one. Luckily, the episodes are readily accessible on YouTube. And once again, say it with me, a banger intro.
La 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 do do do.
Pearly is in the park.
Magic in the city.
I really wonder why these unknown shows have the hardest theme songs. My time watching Qubo unfortunately didn't last too long. About a month after I was stuck with it, my family got cable TV back, thus ending my Qubo days. But that's not to say I've forgotten about the channel. I still think about those shows from time to time. It was interesting seeing Qubo for the first time as it opened my eyes to a whole new world of cartoons to explore. It's a shame the channel didn't really survive the 2020s, but we can at least remember it for what it was. What did you think of Qubo? How did you find it? Feel free to let me know in the comments. But that's gonna do it for today's video. Thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to my channel for future content.